And I walked into the place. I asked for the owner, and I said, "I've got this car. It's got a Porsche 912 engine, and I'd like you guys to sponsor us." And they basically went, "Sure." And I walked out with a parts credit, which I thought was sponsorship, and the fuse was lit. If this sport's so great, everybody we bring to the track loves it, everybody that's in it sees it. Why can't we get it to a level, uh, where the audience is bigger? I go from picking beans in Cottam to walk in the aisles of a Gigante store with the owner with 4 armed bodyguards. And I flashed back to my time in farming and said, "How did I get here?"
I was going to make a joke about the lights going out, kind of like in a Formula One race, all the different
Yeah.
red lights, and then just hearing the announcer say, go. I'm thinking Murray Walker more than anything else, even though I'm sure the kids listening to this are like, who is Murray Walker?
Yeah, who's
He,
Murray
wa-
Walker?
he was the voice of Formula One. But, anyways, we're going to talk to you, Mr. Jim Bowie, the man who's been behind a number of different sponsorships and motorsports deals galore. And as a massive racing fan, I am so looking forward to getting into it with you. So, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Well, Victor, it's my pleasure, and I can't think of anything I'd rather be doing. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. So let's start first with both of the hats you wear right now, because you're the president and CEO of Brandrenaline, but you're also the founder and CMO, Chief Motorcycling Officer of MotoVitesse Racing Incorporated. So take us through what both of those companies are and what your roles there entail.
Sure. So, um, my family and I lived in the United States for 15 years, and from 95 to 2010. And in 2010, a family situation dictated we had to move back to Canada, and we knew we would never be returning to the US. So in March of 2010, we moved to Toronto. I immediately put out my shingle, Brandrenaline, with the expectation of running a motorsport marketing agency. And my expectation, Victor, was that I would be doing that work for motorsports in Canada. Didn't ultimately work out that way. But that's Brandrenaline. And then MotoVitesse. So MotoVitesse is, how would I say it? It's a 20-year journey, and I love motorsports, and I really love motorsports from the standpoint of marketing, from the way that we can use motorsport to for marketing communication, for uh, uh, to build brands and all the connectivity. It's a perfect metaphor for business. It's um, you need teamwork, you need communication, you need the latest use of technology. You're measured to the thousandths of a second, all that stuff. It's a great metaphor. So I loved it, but there's a challenge with aggregating audience. And I said, if this sport's so great, everybody we bring to the track loves it, everybody that's in it sees it. Why can't we get it to a level, uh, where the audience is bigger? And so the process you go through with any entity like this, Victor, is you start off with, well, what's the problem? What is truly the underlying problem here? That took me several years. And then there was 3 big aha breakthrough things that happened that led me to the point where I said, okay, now I get it. And that's where I created MotoVitesse, is to be the next evolution of the motorsport business model, capitalizing on streaming, on artificial intelligence and other stuff. And that's the top layer. The second layer is why motorcycles, why Canada. So that's what MotoVitesse is.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting back into it with you, but as always, we start from the beginning. And for a gearhead, no better place to be born than Windsor, I would say, because you're basically right across from the automotive capital of the world. So you were born in Windsor, but what was the small town you grew up in?
Yeah, it's called Cottam, Cottam, about 600 people. And we lived not in town. We lived, 2 kilometers outside of town.
And what was life like growing up in Cottam?
It was really simple: farming, hockey, and school. And that was it. And everybody I knew did those 3 things.
And you lived there most of your life. Have I got that right?
Yes, I lived there from when I was born until 12th grade. So when I was 15.
And when you left town, was it Blenheim you went to? You moved to your family?
Yeah, we moved to Blenheim.
Was that still within the neighborhood?
No, Blenheim is halfway between Windsor and London.
Okay, okay.
Ridgetown. 10 miles from Chatham,
Gotcha. Okay. So Chatham right there. Essex County? Or
Kent County.
Kent County. Okay. All right. I'm
Yep.
sort of familiar with Southwestern Ontario. That's where
Yeah.
it starts. Okay. So when we were putting this together, I asked you in advance just so I could do some research what your hobbies were. And I swear to God, when you had hockey, dirt bikes, and snowmobiling in there, the first thing that came to mind was Gilles Villeneuve. Because those are
Yeah.
the things that he did growing up as well too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So putting hockey aside for a second, how did you get into dirt bikes?
So we had a neighbor that lived um, near us, and he did not own a farm, which was rare, but he was the Southwest Ontario distributor for Yamaha, and he had all kinds of toys. And the kids in the neighborhood would just go to his house and jump on stuff. And not all of his toys were Yamaha, because my first two-wheel vehicle I rode on, well, I rode on mini bikes. You remember those with the 3.5 horsepower Briggs and Stratton motor? He had a Honda 50 and he had a Honda Trail 70. And those, I just lived on those. And then when the winter came around, Yamaha had a snowmobile called the Snowjet, which was it had a Yamaha motor, but the brand was Snowjet. And my father bought one of those. It was a Snowjet 340. And as soon as we had snow, and I'd, look out the window every day and hope for snow. And I spent a ton of time on those, having a blast.
Would you say that that was your first introduction to motorsports in general?
No, it's not really. My father took me. There was a racetrack in Windsor called Checker Flag Raceway, and they raced what's now considered NASCAR Canada. It was a dirt track, and I had an uncle that was in drag racing. And
Okay.
so when I was doing dirt biking and snowmobiling, I never even considered motorsport. I didn't know what motorsport was, but I got introduced to basically stock car racing and drag racing at a very early age.
And what about hockey as well? Just something that you played because most Canadians play it growing up, or was there another reason you got into hockey?
Yeah, well, my father drove that bus. He was an unbelievable hockey player. He got drafted by the Boston Bruins, which he never got to fulfill. He was only 15 years old, and he wasn't. My grandmother didn't let him go to Boston,
Sorry, did you
but
say he got drafted at 15 years old?
he got drafted at 15 years old. That was original six hockey. There was no official draft. It was completely different then. But
Okay.
he would have needed to relocate to Massachusetts and get in their farm system, and my grandmother wouldn't let him go. But he was an unbelievable hockey player, and I was one of three boys. I have two brothers and a younger sister, and so he had us on skates early. And again, um, everywhere around us was frozen water in the winter to skate on. So we we shot a lot of pucks, and I started organized hockey at 5 years old.
So staying on your father for a second, why do you credit him with being one of your biggest influences?
Well, sadly, he died when I was 14, and my memories of him were his passion for hockey. He was a Chicago Blackhawks fan, Bobby Hull fan, and he
Ah,
used to
okay. There's the connection. Okay.
and he used to do this thing. We'd watch the Chicago Blackhawks on TV, and he used to slam his hand on the table as soon as Bobby Hull got the puck, expecting that big slap shot from the right wing. So that was my hockey side of it. But everything outside of that, from my father, was work. He worked all the time. He worked on the farms, and he worked for Ontario Hydro. He was a lineman with the Hydro, and so all I knew was work. So when I started working, it was completely normal for me, and that work ethic is something that not only have I carried through, but I've tried to live up to.
Did you guys make it to many Red Wings games? Because a lot of the people that I know from Southwestern Ontario usually align themselves with the Detroit Red Wings. But I get that your father was a fan of Bobby Hull, so I guess he went to Chicago because of Bobby Hull.
Yeah, we did go. I have a memory of going to a Red Wings game at the Olympia. So this is now the third arena since then. There was at Olympia, and then there was Joe
Joe
Louis,
Louis Arena, yeah.
and now the Little Caesars Pizza place. We went and saw the Montreal Canadiens, uh, and I was amazed coming from where I came from. I couldn't believe what I witnessed when I went to this. It was Montreal versus Detroit. It was Pete Mahovlich, Frank Mahovlich, and Marcel
Mm.
Dion, and we got to go right down to the ice during the warm up. We were sitting in the rafters for the game, but right warm up we got to go to the ice. Peter Mahovlich was 12 feet tall and weighed 450 pounds. I couldn't believe it. It was an amazing, amazing uh, game, and Detroit won 7-6 over the Montreal Canadiens.
Whew. Hockey players were built differently back then.
Yeah, no lid, no buckets, the whole thing.
There's a photo that was floating around Reddit about a year ago, and I've seen it around social media, and it had a side by side picture of both Gordie Howe and Brett Hall. And Brett Hall was working on the farm, or Bobby Hall, sorry, Bobby Hall was working on a farm. I think he was holding a hay bale, and then you had Gordie Howe sitting in a boat holding his fishing rod. And no word of a lie, they both look like they were weightlifters. They didn't look like the type of like a hockey player. Like you didn't expect them to be able to go hustle it up and down the ice. But I guess that's the build you needed back in the day. It was about being an enforcer and less about being quick.
Yeah, for sure. It was great stuff.
Okay, so that work ethic that your father instilled in you, how did that transfer over to your very first job where, correct me if I'm wrong, you were planting hothouse tomatoes on a commission basis?
Well, again, this was just a normal, when I was growing up, when I'm 4, when I'm 5, when I'm 6, and then kids are getting the age of 7 and 8, you go to work. Now looking back on it, it's organized child labor for sure.
Probably was, yeah.
But hothouse tomatoes was to hothouse tomatoes. I made 65 cents an hour, and that was in the spring of the year when I was 7 years old. That was really, Victor, the only job I did where I got paid by the hour. There was a few others. If you drive a tractor or run machinery, you get paid by the hour. I didn't like doing that. I found out that I like to work on commission, which is picking cash crops, green and yellow beans and strawberries and cucumbers and tomatoes and radishes, and you got paid for what you produced. And the organized child labor thing, I'm not kidding. The kids, and there was a group again of like 7 years old to 16 years old. We would go to farm A, do his green beans, go to farm B, do their green beans, go to farm C, do their green beans, and you rotated and did all the crops. They all colluded. We all got paid the exact same thing. There was a bonus system. It was the same for everybody. And I kicked ass at it. And I truly enjoyed it and didn't think there was any other way. I don't think I met anybody, Victor, that didn't work on the farm until I got to high school.
Well, speaking of your time on the farm or working on farms, I ask all of my guests, where they went to college or university, and sometimes a guest didn't. And so we just kind of glaze over it. But you were very quick to point out that you got your education working on the farm. So, like, still sticking to this topic, what did you learn on farming that's helped you for your future, get you to where you are now?
I mean, everything. It was uh, uh, teamwork, it was quality control, it was sales, it was marketing, it was wholesale, it was retail, it was accountability. It was the effort that you put in, you get the results back. It was all that stuff. And again, I can draw a straight line from the stuff that I learned there to stuff that I still do today.
You eat what you kill when you're working on commission.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we didn't call it that. I don't remember what it was called. Maybe it was called piecemeal. I don't remember. It certainly wasn't called commission, but you were paid to produce, and if you produced more, you made more. Um, and I wasn't very popular with the people I worked around because I won all the cash bonuses at the end of the day. So I ended up, by the time I was 10, 11, I had a side deal with the farm owners that I didn't participate in the bonus system with them. I had my own separate one because I kicked ass. And, I mentioned the word quality control. When you pull carrots out of the ground or radishes, they're going straight to retail. You can't destroy the plant. They got to be
Mm.
presented properly and all that stuff. And so it was a great education for me.
Interesting thing about the bonus structure, I had no idea that it was competitive. When you were talking about it first, I thought there was a certain threshold, and everyone who got over that threshold was entitled to the bonus. But it sounds like that's not the case. The bonus was only awarded to, I guess, the person on top of the podium,
Top producer.
top producer. Okay, so after high school, though, you left farming, and was it Rossini Dodge? Was that
Rossini Dodge. Yep.
Rossini Dodge? Was that your first? I guess you could sort of say your first full time formal job ever.
Absolutely. And I walked in cold off the street without without a resume. I didn't know what a resume was. I just said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm good with numbers. I can't work on cars. I don't know anything about the mechanics, but maybe I could work in the parts department." And I basically got hired on the spot. It was a kind of a miracle to me.
And they had, you said it was NASCAR Canada, but was this back in the day when it was called the Cash Car Super Series?
No, it was before that. It was
Before
called,
that, geez,
yeah.
well,
This is yes, Victor, I'm old. This was 1977, and I think it was called the Western Ontario Stock Car Association, something like that.
and so was
I
this
still
your
have
first
the
introduction to motorsports, though?
so it was, and I still wasn't. Um, what they had me do, I did volunteer to work on the team, but I had no mechanical skills. So what they had me do is I went to the races and I would push tires around. I would get meals for the team and, just the stuff that nobody else wanted to do. But when we got back to the shop, we had a driver. His name was Serge Tesselin. Serge loved to tear up the equipment. And we ran these fancy aluminum Corvette radiators with really super small radiator fins. And we'd get back to the shop. They'd take the radiator out after it being trashed by Serge. And I had to go in with a really small screwdriver and flatten out all of those fins on the radiator. And I must have did that 50 times.
That's
Drove me nuts.
tedious. I was gonna say
Yeah.
that's tedious and mind-numbing. Oh my
But that
god.
was the extent of my touching the race car. I did ask to drive it, and they said no,
Didn't even manage to get a test out of it or anything?
nothing.
What did you learn about, though, putting aside what you were doing with the race team on a volunteer basis, what did you learn or what did you like about working at Rossini Dodge?
So I got to Rossini Dodge. Um, I got pretty good at it. I could remember part numbers. I could remember prices. So if you came to me and said I need a tune-up kit for a 72 Dodge Dart with a 340 with a two-barrel carb, I knew all that stuff, and I could get it for the guys in the shop. And I had uh, I had a knack for it. And the prices changed every quarter. Every 3 months, we'd get new price books. But I picked up on that quick, and I could remember part numbers, which were 7 digits, and I could remember pricing, and that was good for me. And it was customer service, accountability, and, all that kind of stuff.
We are gonna go in depth right now into your motorsports marketing career, but just talk to me about how hard you were trying to break into it before we jump into it. There's a lot that we can cover. There's a lot that we're not gonna cover today because you've just had such an expansive career and we only have so much time. But let's talk about just trying to get into that business. So moving out of Rossini Dodge and just getting into motorsports marketing altogether. Like, what was the allure and why did you go 100 miles an hour, no pun intended, into this profession?
Yeah, so, my wife and I moved to Vancouver, and, we had our first daughter there, and she had health issues. She ended up with a heart problem, had open heart surgery, had complications, and I was running a business in Vancouver, a direct sales business, and it was doing very well. And we got through all that, and which was quite traumatic. And we just wanted to get out of Vancouver, and we wanted to spend time and rehabilitate our daughter. So I said, "Hey, let's go to California."
Okay.
And I said, "We're going to go to California. We'll go down there for 8 months to a year, and then when we go back, we're going to go back to the east coast of Canada." So that was our plan. So we go down. This is a long story. I'm trying to make it short, Victor.
No, no, no. Go for it. Give us the full beans. Go for it.
We go to California. My plan is we got a place in Anaheim. My plan is to lay around, take it easy, spend time with my wife and daughter. Didn't take long. I got restless. I go to Huntington Beach. I lease an office. I start buying and selling stuff. The office right beside where I was a place that made ceramic teeth for the local dentists. It was a
Okay.
two-man shop. And so when I would go there to my office, one of the guys that worked at the shop, he rolled in his Porsche 911, and I rolled in my Mercedes SL, and we became buddies pretty quick, nice car. Like, can I drive your car? Can I drive your car? Yeah, cool. One day he walks in with a 4x6 photo of a race car. He goes, "Hey, I'm selling my race car. Are you interested?" Now, Victor, no, I was not following motorsports. I wasn't at any level was I ever even thinking about motorsports. And this guy walks in with a race car for sale.
Well, what
And
what kind of what kind of car was it though? Don't leave me
it was
hanging.
it was a Lola T320 Super V with a Porsche 912 four
Okay.
cylinder 1600cc engine.
Was it the type of sorry, what was the engine displacement again? 1600 cc?
1600.
Okay, so yeah, basically the equivalent to I guess an F3 or an F4 car today.
Yeah.
More like
Yeah.
The old Toyota Atlantics as well.
Yeah, Super V was the big class that Arie Luyendyk went from Super V to IndyCar.
Yeah, it was likewise with I think Alan Sir Jr. and Michael Andretti as well too. Yeah, very
Yeah.
familiar. It was the precursor to Indy Lights.
Yeah, and so the car I was involved with was the generation way before that because they ran Volkswagen motors. They were water cooled, much faster. But that's what the car was. Really cool car. So I bought it. The next,
What next though?
sorry. So I drove the car in a parking lot. That didn't do anything for me. So I ended up bringing the guy I bought it from, my work neighbor. I said, "You drive it." We went out to Riverside when Riverside existed. We
Oh,
did an SCCA national event that Paul Newman was there, Ted Nugent was there, Christopher Cross was there, the all racing. And I went to a place called Circle Porsche Audi in Long Beach. And I walked into the place. I asked for the owner and I said, "I've got this car. It's got a Porsche 912 engine and I'd like you guys to sponsor us." And they basically went, "Sure." And I walked out with a parts credit, which I thought was sponsorship, and the fuse was lit, Victor. That was it. Now I said, "I've got to do this." I understood the permission marketing elements of motorsport, where you put this branding on a car versus putting it on a billboard or on a page in a magazine, and the marketing message is it's permissive. It's permissive. You get this permission. So it lit this spark, and I said, "I've got to do this." So came time we had to leave California, and I had this race car, and I had no way to get it back. I went back to the guy I bought it from. I said, "I can't take it back. Here you go. It's yours again." And I gave it to him and came back to Canada. One of many dumb things I've done. That's near the top of the list.
you think you should have held on to the car for a little bit longer?
Absolutely.
You should have? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Well, interesting point too is because you said this was in the 70s, right?
That was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s, okay, because
Yeah.
it was like late 60s, early 70s when the concept of sponsoring a car really in motorsports, really the commercial value was starting to be realized. Like, you think about STP with Andy Granatelli in IndyCar USAC Championship Trail, Winston or RJ Reynolds in NASCAR, and then Gold Leaf on Lotus in Formula One. So, in that time, was it a bit of a gold rush per se? Was everyone all of a sudden looking at motorsports as this new medium?
Well, at that time, I hadn't really dug deep into what's going on in IndyCar and NASCAR, so I started to do that. And for sure, the um, the lack of restrictions on advertising with tobacco and alcohol certainly contributed. Um, the Indy 500 was growing in popularity. The Daytona 500 live TV, all of that stuff was happening. So I wanted to be a part of it.
And a part of it you were. We're gonna jump ahead to the mid '90s right now, where you were the director of marketing for Treadway Racing, Fred Treadway's team. And was the 1990 it was the '96 Indy 500 your first Indy 500?
No, I've been to the Indy 500 as a fan for 1990, 91, and 92, and then I was credentialed for 93 and 94 working with Scott Goodyear.
Okay.
And 95. And then our first race as a team was in 96.
Oh, because you were working with him when he was with Walker Racing and Steve Horn's team then?
Yes.
Or was it Rick Gallus's team?
No, it was Steve Horn in
Steve
95.
it's '95. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we 95 in the pace car.
Yeah, exactly.
But, so you make the jump after. There's this like, we're not gonna get into the details for the audience, but there's a split between the 2 series. Think kind of like AFL and NFL, and all of a sudden, the Indy 500 gets turned upside down. You go into it in 1997, new cars, new team, and what was it like, not just marketing the Indy 500, but marketing kind of this new series? What was it What was the response from sponsors on the ground? Was it still a bit of a hard sell? Would people go, "Hey, wait a minute, is this still the same series that races at Long Beach and Michigan and so forth?"
Yeah, it was the more you tried to explain what was happening, the less likely you were to get anywhere. So
Mm.
in our situation in the IRL, in my situation, what I did is I ignored CART and Champ Car, especially in the discussions with sponsors that were new to motorsport. Companies like Miller Lite that I did a deal with, they knew more than I did about what's going on. So uh, they knew the value of being part of the Indy 500. But other companies like Sprint, when I did the Sprint deal, they had never been involved in sports marketing on any level with any sport. So this was their first foray into sports marketing. So I didn't get into the split and the differences and all that stuff, and that helped.
And take us through the 97 Indy 500 because you were the director of marketing. There's a photo of you. You could we can people can find it online, I imagine, where you get the chance to drink the milk because that is what the winner gets when they win the Indy 500 is homegrown Indiana farmers milk. They pass it around and so forth. So you get a chance to win the Indy 500, and it's I I don't know how early this is in your career. How do you top that? Like, do you look at that and go, "I think I've made it"? It's kind of like, I guess, I mean, kind of like a kid playing hockey their entire life, winning the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and as time goes on, I appreciate it more, Victor. I mean, now they dump the milk all over their head,
Oh, yeah.
but back then, you know, Arie drank the milk. I happened to be standing right beside him on the podium. He just turned to me, handed me the milk. I took a swig, and then I handed it to Fred Treadway. And there's 400 photographers there, so somebody got a photo of it, of me actually drinking it. I have it up on my wall right here. And so, yeah, as time goes on, I appreciate that more and more. But I'll something that you'll appreciate. The race ends on Tuesday. We had the
Yes.
banquet Tuesday night, and we raced in Texas. We were on track on Friday in Texas.
You were on track on Friday in Texas, and then Ari made his way back into the media again from that Texas race as well too,
Yes,
when USAC screwed up the scoring and, well, AJ Foyt smacked him right in victory
yes.
lane.
Oh yeah, right
Yeah.
into the flower pot.
Yeah, for anyone who are listening is that there was a timing and scoring issue, and there was a debate over who had won the race. Forget who was racing for, AJ Foyt at that time. Was it Billy
Billy
Boat? It
Boat.
was Billy Boat, yeah, Billy Boat, and basically in victory lane had to take the trophy away, and rather than let the officials, I guess, sort it out immediately, Ari Ari went to victory lane
Well, let me
and
correct
give
you
us the
if
story.
I may.
Please go for it.
AJ Foyt still has the trophy.
Really? He still got the
He did not
trophy.
give it back. They had to make another one to give it to us.
I wonder if he displays it proudly,
Probably.
in Houston somewhere.
Yep.
God. Talk to me about the Miller Lite deal for a second, because that one always caught me off guard because I remember seeing Ari in the fire suit, and the fire suit looked almost identical to the fire suit Bobby Rahal was wearing in kart because he had Miller Lite sponsorship on both his car and within his team. Did Miller Lite ever come in and say, you know what, we really want the car as well too? And you found yourself going, well, we've already got the side pods signed by Sprint. We can't really put you anywhere. Or was that just a fire suit deal?
No, the discussions with Miller Lite started way before Sprint. They wanted the whole car. They
Mm,
just weren't willing to pay what what we were hoping to get. And so that was a long negotiation. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast with that. It's way smaller than anyone could ever imagine, embarrassingly small. It was a three-state deal: Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana, I think. And it was for their distributors. The suit was a separate personal services deal for Ari himself, which I did that deal as well. Um, and at the last minute, I decided to put the Miller Lite logo on the top of Ari's helmet for the
mm,
race.
okay.
And there was a thing called the Joyce Julius report that measured sponsorship value for logo exposure, and Miller Lite was tops for the entire Indy 500. I have a nice letter from Jack McDonough, who was the head of Miller Lite at that time, sent me a nice letter, said, "Thank you for all you did." But it was embarrassingly small deal, and but a lot of fun to do.
What was the mood like after the race? Clearly, you guys were celebrating, but there was another issue with timing and scoring as well because there was a caution, and USAC threw the green flag with I think it was 10 to go, and teammate Scott Goodyear, Canadian Scott Goodyear, was in second, and he's been the bridesmaid at Indy more than he likes to mention. No disrespect to Scott, but then USAC made the mistake of leaving the full course caution lights on around the track. So there was confusion because drivers are seeing a green flag, but then they're also seeing yellow lights, which means hold your position and don't pass. Did you guys like what was that dynamic like between, say, the team and Scott and Arie after the race was over?
Well, I never wore a radio because I get too wound up, and so,
Mm.
I don't know what the drivers were told. In my discussions with people after, Ari saw a green light going into turn 3, and he took off, and Scott didn't see it, and there was no indication from the timing, from the flag stand, or from race control that it was coming. Ari didn't care, and he took off, and that was that. The team was still euphoric. We finished 1-2. You know, I was at Indy in '92 when Scott finished second to Junior. I was with him with the pace car thing in '95. I felt really bad for Scott, but our team finished 1-2. It had only happened once in history before that with Penske. So we were very euphoric. Everybody except for Scott, Kevin Blanche, his crew chief, who's now the head of tech at IndyCar. So it was mixed emotions to answer your question.
And those were new cars. There were a lot of concerns about whether or not that 4-liter pushrod engine formula was going to hold up, and especially when you stress test those components over a 3-day period, rather than it just being a consistent race that should go for about 3.5 hours. Like, what could you guys touch the cars in between Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, or were they kind of like in park for May and impounded?
No, we could touch them. I mean, we couldn't do stuff like change the motor, but we could, they could tweak on the cars. We had kind of a secret weapon that didn't get publicized as much as I thought it should. Our motors were Oldsmobile, V8s built by Roush.
Oh,
Um,
that's
yeah,
okay. That's right. I forgot that Jack Roche was building IRL motors back then. Yeah. And it's interesting hearing Roush associated with General Motors too, especially in the
absolutely.
'90s. Yeah, because you think Jack Roush and like them and Ford go together like hamburger and fries.
Yes, exactly.
So after you're done you've done your time at Treadway Racing, you do cross the floor and you go to Championship Auto Racing teams. And so, what brought you to Pac West Racing?
So that was really my big goal was to get the kart champ car. That's where Penske was. That's where all the big teams were. That's where that was my goal. And I don't want to get in the weeds here, but I was a Canadian living and working in the US on a TN visa, it's called, which are management consultant visa that are limited to, at that time, limited to 1 year at a time, and you could renew it once. So no matter what I did, I couldn't have gone beyond 2 years at Treadway. I couldn't gone beyond 2 years at Pac West. So I knew I had to move on. I wanted to get there. And my work had been recognized throughout racing. The level of work I did on proposals and presentations. I was the first, probably the first to use Adobe Illustrator. It's really what got me in the garages at Indy was using Adobe Illustrator and doing 2D graphics of what the cars would look like with the branding on it. I had that ability, and so it didn't take me long to find another role, and I was thrilled to go to CART and with Pac West.
And just for anyone's listening, Pac West Racing, if anyone here has watched or listening or watching has watched the Sylvester Stallone racing movie Driven, Pac West Racing is the team that's featured in the actual thing. That's where Stallone and Kip Perdue, that's the team that they race with. So were you working primarily with Mark Blundell, Mauricio Gugelmin, or was it the team altogether?
It was the whole team. The major assets of the race team were sorted with Motorola and with Hollywood Tobacco. So I was brought in to try to fill in some gaps, and that's what I focused on. We had a team that serviced the partners, so I was there in a biz dev role to try to offer budget relief where I could.
And again, in your first year there, they had a banner year. Was that the year that Blundell won 3 races and Gugelmin won? I think it was Vancouver, or was that the year after?
So I think Blundell won at Portland before I got there, which would
And,
have been '97.
and that was that amazing three-way photo finish between
Yes,
him. It was him, Pruitt, and Jill DeFerrin.
yeah. And then my first race with the team was at Fontana, and we won that race.
That's right. Yeah, Blundell did win that race as well too.
Yeah. And So yeah, they started winning races. I don't think I had too much to do with that, but they did win the first race that I was on their staff.
Did you have anything to do with their involvement in Driven? Because even though the movie came out in '01 and was filmed in 2000, I feel like '99 would have been when the discussion started with
Uh,
Stallone.
yeah, no, I was gone by the time that started.
Okay, and where you moved on to was Skip Barber. So what brought you to this? Brought you to Skip Barber? Was it still you having to move on because of the visa at this point? And if so, what was the attraction to Skip Barber?
So yes, I did have to move on because I was getting to the limit of my TN visa. What really attracted me to Skip Barber, Victor, was that it was a business that had to be profitable. And I don't want to sound like that's a slight on Treadway and Pac West, but they didn't. That would have been nice if they operated at a profit, um, but it was tough to get to that threshold. Skip Barber had to make a profit, and it had such an influential impact on every other form of motorsport, from teaching mechanics to the people coming through the school, going through their race series, through the pro series, and I wanted to be a part of it. And the guy that brought me in to Skip Barber um, was the former head of marketing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So he had seen my work. We had worked together on the Sprint deal and a few others, and he was on me quite a bit for probably 18 months. I finally went to the school and sat down with the team there, sat down with Skip, and went there and had a blast. We had at that time there was no such thing as Audi customer racing or Porsche customer racing. So we had 750 amateur drivers. We had 5 amateur regional racing championships. We had the Pro Series, um, and I was responsible for all the marketing. And I built a great team there. Best team I've ever had in motorsport was the team I put together at Skip Barber. We kicked ass.
And was this when they already moved to Dodge at this point? Were they still on Saab? Did it border that by any chance?
Yeah, Dodge was there, but we did go through a few Dodge brand managers when I was there,
Okay.
which was always tough. You know, what's this line item? What is this thing? So, but we got through that, and but I had a blast there, and you know, in my time there, Ryan Hunter Ray, um,
Was Danica Patrick
Townsend,
also coming through there as well too at that
yeah,
point? Yep.
Danica Patrick, AJ Allmendinger, Andy Lally, Brian Sellers. I'm leaving out lots, but we had some pretty Michael Valiente from Vancouver. We had a lot of guys, Daniel DeLeo and Anthony Simoni, from guys from Canada. We had a lot of we had it was the ladder. You went it was Barber Dodge Pro Series, then Atlantic, and then IndyCar.
So this was the time when Indy Lights was kind of I mean, Kart was kind of sunsetting Indy Lights at that point, and then you had the IRL with the Infinity Pro Series. But yeah, no, that was the ladder series. I mean, I've seen them race a number of times when they would come to Toronto in the late '90s and early 2000s. I'm very familiar with the Barber Dodge Pro Series. And you guys didn't really rely on teams, if I've got it correct. Like the team sponsored the cars, but I believe Skip Barber as an organization brought all the cars and maintained all the cars equally.
Yeah, we owned and operated all of them. They just had to show up with their helmet.
Gotcha. Okay. And so after you finished at Skip Barber, you moved back to CART, but this time you were corporate side. You weren't working teams, and you were their director of partnerships. So take us through what it was like then, because CART in the early 2000s, it had been going through a lot, to say the least. I'd say from like basically 99 to 2003 was a very tough time for the series.
Yeah, so the guy that hired me at Pac West, Steve Fusick, was the head of marketing at Champ Car. So again, he knew what I was capable of. He reached out and said, "Hey, yeah, how about coming to work for the sanctioning body?" And what had happened is himself and Chris Pook, who was the president then, they decided that they wanted somebody on staff that would be a resource for all of the IndyCar teams. So my primary role was um, that if Ray Hall or Derek Walker's team, if they needed support to put a sponsorship deal together, that I was there to help them. The sanctioning body wanted to be able to communicate to the teams that we've got a guy as a resource for you, and that was my role. I signed an NDA with every single team. I had a great reputation, and so that's what I was brought in to do. I also had kind of a client services role with Honda, Toyota, Ford, Bridgestone, and Yokohama while I was there.
Take me through those 2 years, 2002 to 2003, because in 2002, there was the exodus. Honda and Toyota had left the series, Mercedes had left about a year or 2 prior, and then a lot of the major teams, which bring a lot of, I guess you could sort of say, marketing bang for your buck as well too. Penske had left early on. We had no Team Rahal, yeah, it was Team Rahal back then, was moving one car over. Likewise for Adrian Fernandez. Chip Ganassi was completely gone as well too. So what was that offseason like going from 2002 into 2003?
Yeah, it was brutal. We had promoter agreements that we had to field 18
The
cars.
18 cars, I remember that, yeah, that was a big
Yeah,
deal.
so it was brutal, and um, you know, it was obviously inevitable that you couldn't keep going with two series. We couldn't compete with the magnetic pull of the Indy 500, which, as much as Roger Penske and Chip Ganassi and all these guys tried to resist it, they couldn't. And a few years later, obviously, we had one series.
What were some of the deals that you were responsible for? Let's focus on the 2003 season just because that's when there was a lot of turnover and a lot of new blood had come in. And I imagine that you were a big resource for some of the new teams. Like I'm thinking Fittipaldi Dingman Racing, American Spirit Team Johansson. I'm probably PK Racing at that point as well too, Craig Pollock's team.
Yeah, so um, Fittipaldi Dingman Racing, I wrote basically their sponsorship strategy. Emerson was such a gentleman, and so uh, uh, he was very grateful for the stuff I did for them. That was a lot of fun. Jamie Dingman was the son of a former Ford executive, great guy. Um, I did a lot of work with Walker. I had built the Hispanic Marketing Council when I was there, which was the first time in pro sports. So I did a lot of work with the Mexican brands. And, one of the things I did was I was sent to Mexico City to meet with the owner of Gigante,
Mm.
which is the second largest retailer in Mexico. They were partners of Rahal with Michel Jourdain. And I was asked to come down there by myself and meet with Angel, who owned the company, to map out a strategy for them, which I did, and extended the Rahal deal for 2 more years. Really, not to get off track here, but I go from picking beans in Cottam to walk in the aisles of a Gigante store with the owner with 4 armed bodyguards. And I flashed back to my time in farming and said, how did I get here? So not to get off track, but this actually happened to me.
And to put it in context for people who aren't familiar with Gigante, that's kind of like Mexico's answer to Walmart, right?
Yeah, Walmart was number one and they were number two.
And they were number 2. Were you behind the Roche Brands sponsorship as well too? Because I remember they came in, it was, Mexican company as the official lubricant, and I can't remember if it was '03 or '04, but I remember that being a big deal, and it was the type of sponsorship that was on everyone's fire suit.
Yeah, no, I wasn't part of that.
Okay, so let's go to your next step because, again, sticking with motorsports, now you go series side again, or I should say go to the junior level. You're the series manager of Formula BMW. So just give everyone a high level as to what Formula BMW was.
So it was a back of a napkin concept by a guy named Michael Muehlberger, who worked for BMW Motorsport in Munich, München, and he wanted to build this global um, uh, grassroots system or entry level system where they could snag the best of the best at a very young age with a goal of bringing somebody through to get to their Formula One team. It was a brilliant concept, and I was brought in to run that series.
How much of what you learned from your time, I guess, with not necessarily Cart, but with Skip Barber applied to what you were doing in that role? Because it seems like that would be pretty similar.
Yeah, I mean, everything I did kind of led to that. And the agency that got the contract to manage to operate that series was owned and operated by two former colleagues at Skip Barber. When they were at Skip Barber, they had BMW's consumer ride and drive business, dealer training, and all this other stuff. So I had again worked with them at Skip Barber. They knew what I was capable of. And you're right, there's a lot of similarity. We were age limited, 17 to 21, and it was a true development program. And we taught on track and off track stuff.
What's crazy is that that's probably one step above Formula Ford because now you've got you've got wings and other aerodynamics mixed in, and you said that it's age limited to what was it? You said 17 to 20
21.
to 21, and
Yep.
now you've got kids like Kimi Antonelli going into Formula 1 at 17.
Yeah.
Like they're nowhere near like if Formula BMW was around now, you'd probably be looking at you'd have to move the age limit down to like 13 or 14 for it to be
Yeah.
effective because it's just gotten incredibly crazy with that. Was Alexander Rossi racing in the series when you were overseeing it? Because I know that he came up through
No.
Formula B. No, he didn't.
No, my first year was Hinchcliffe and Graham Rahal and Robbie. No, Robbie Wickens was my second year. Billy Johnson, Tommy Milner, they were all first year. Joey Hand, Rick Hendrick owned the team in that
Really, Rick
series.
Hendrick owned a team. I had no idea.
Yeah, personal favor to the CEO of BMW North America, Tom Purvis, that he called him up and said, "We're doing this thing. I need you to own the team." It was Lowe's branding, car number 24. So that was cool.
Of course, car number 24.
Yeah,
I imagine some of those drivers make because there, like you mentioned, there was a number of different Formula BMW series across the world. But I remember correctly, there was a bit of like kind of like an all-star race or an all-star series where they bought the champions or the best of the best from all of them together. I imagine you participated in that as well too, because I think it was in the Middle East, probably Bahrain.
yeah. So I left Formula BMW at the end of '05. Again, 2 years.
Gotcha. Yep.
But I was involved in all of the planning. It was called the BMW World Final, Formula BMW World Final. Yes, it was at Bahrain. And everybody that had done it, I can't remember if it was you had to have done 3 races. There was a threshold. Anybody that had done 3 races or more was invited to go to the world final. And that's where Robbie Wickens was discovered by Red Bull.
He is single-handedly one of the most versatile drivers to come out of this country. I'm a massive Robert Wickens fan. I got a bunch of his merch. I was gonna put it on today, but I didn't wanna look like too much of a fanboy in our call.
Sure,
It'd be
sure.
like more like the Wickens podcast. And I think, you said Robbie Wickens was discovered, but did Nico Rosberg win that series? Because I know that he had success at least racing in Formula BMW in Europe.
Um, the world final, Nico Hulkenberg finished second.
Hulkenberg, okay, so both of them were in it. Because I know Rosberg was in it because Keiki had a team as well.
Yeah, and Wickens finished sixth. Wickens started last and finished sixth, which is what
That's
happened.
fantastic, and at the same time too, that's the number he was using, he's used at least when he was in IndyCar. Okay, so the 2 years are up because we're going on this 2-year cycle again. What brings you to Acme Branding Company, and what did your role as the vice president of marketing entail?
So there was a couple things. I had met some people from the music industry who had done some work with Car and Driver Road and Track magazine, and we had an opportunity if we put an agency together that we would get all the ride and drive business for Car and Driver Road and Track. Um, and so that was a piece of it. I was also in conversations with James Hinchcliffe and his parents about his future. Specifically at the end of '05 when he had done Pro Mazda, I met with his parents at Road Atlanta, and it was like, should he go to school? And I
Mm.
said, James is, he's extraordinary out of the car. I think you need to take advantage of it. You can always go back to school later. And James's father, may he rest in peace, who's just a brilliant man. He said, "Well, okay, so when do you start? Being James's manager?" And I was like, "No, I'm not a driver manager." But we took them on as a client, created the Mayor of Hinchtown persona, which to me is wild. Uh, you know, uh, it's still going on.
Where did that come from? Like, well, what's the origin story behind his nickname?
So we wanted to do content with James before social media existed. YouTube existed, but nothing. There was no Facebook. There was no. So we needed to create a space, a website, where we could expose James's personality. So I came up with the website's gonna be a town. It's gonna have a newspaper, which is where the media's from. It's gonna have a uh, movie theater, which is where the YouTube stuff will be. And so we built the town, and then we need a mayor, so mayor of Hinchtown, and uh, and it no nobody resisted. Everybody thought it was a great idea, and the way it went, and it's been unbelievable.
Some of the other deals too. I had no idea that you were working. Was this your first foray into NASCAR as well? Because you were working with MB2 Motorsports.
Yeah, so that came about through stuff I had done with Ray Hall. There was a connection to Shell and introduced me to Jay Fry, who's now back at Ray Hall after all the stuff that he's done because he ran that team. So they needed help. They had the U.S. Army partnership with John Nemechek, and that was expiring. So they hired our agency to come in. They ended up getting to a point where they sold it to he sold the racing team to a place called, yeah, what was it called? I'm sorry, I don't remember. It
No,
was
it's
a
all good.
resort. It was a resort owner who came in and said, "I got lots of money and buy the team." And
Is it James Finch?
no, it was like
No.
Ginn, Ginn, or something like that.
Oh, yes, and became Gin Racing. Yes. Bobby Gin? No.
Yeah, we were out. They came in, we were out.
Okay. Did you have a hand in Johnny Benson's Valvoline Pontiac? Because I think that was one of the slickest looking cars in NASCAR. That Gen 4 Pontiac Grand Prix with the Valvoline colors on it.
Yeah, I had no part of that, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. So let's jump forward one more time and the Sports Management Network. So you became the vice president of marketing again. So are we still on the 2-year cycle in the United States?
We are. Um, so sports management again came from the former head of Ford Racing globally, had retired from Ford and was working there, and called me and said, "Hey, we're trying to get Penske we want to be Penske's motorsport sponsorship agency of record," even though the guy that owned Sports Management Network was John Caponegro, who Roger Penske had instilled as the CEO of CART when he was 32 years old and was Roger's lawyer, one of Roger's lawyers. They didn't have that sponsorship business, so they asked me to come in and help them do that, and we did that and became agency of record for Penske Racing. That role, I'll answer your question before you ask it. When we started that, I had no expectation that I would be going to races. Once we secured the Penske deal, um, John Caponegro walked into my office, handed me a hard card application for NASCAR, and said, "We're going to be going to a lot of races." And I didn't want to do that, and that's not what I didn't see any value in doing that. So that ended up being the end of that. There was other contributing factors. I was commuting 55 kilometers each way I lived in Windsor and I was working in Rochester Hills, crossing the border twice a day. It beat the crap out of me,
So
but
for all
great experience.
for the jobs that we had been mentioning prior to that, were you moving around over those 2 years or were you keeping Windsor as your base?
Well, Formula BMW and Sports Management Network and Acme Branding Company, I lived in Windsor that whole time.
Okay. Okay. And you were just driving over the border.
Yep,
A lot of treks to Indianapolis, I imagine.
lots.
Jeez, you probably could do the drive with your eyes closed.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then after the Sports Management Network, you get a chance to be the VP of Marketing and Brand Development for the AMA, and not the American Marketing Association, but the American Motorcyclist Association. So, how did that come about? And did that kind of bring things full circle for you, considering that you kind of became a gearhead with motorcycles or dirt bikes at a young age?
For sure. It was completely unexpected. You remember I told you about the guy that was the VP at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway who then
Yes.
became VP at Skip Barber? Well, he was in the C-suite at the AMA. And when I was working for Sports Management Network, he called me and said, "We're doing a complete re-energizing of the American Motorcyclists Association, and we need your help." And so that's how that came about. Again, somebody I'd worked with who knew my reputation and what I could do, and um, and I was happy to go there. And again, just had a blast.
Was this when the AMA had been acquired by the Daytona Motorsports Group, like it was Jim Francis' company?
So the AMA, which is the nonprofit motorcycle advocacy nonprofit organization, that had nothing to do with what you mentioned.
Okay. All right. So nothing to do with the motorsports division that were sanctioning races
Well,
across.
they
Yes.
owned it. They owned it,
Hmm.
and they still sanction it today. DMG bought AMA Pro Racing, so
That's what it was. Okay.
everything under the umbrella of AMA Pro Racing, except for AMA Supercross, which was a whole separate deal and still is. So they bought all of it: hill climb, flat track, arena cross, superbike, all that stuff. They bought it all, and I got there at the very end of that, and uh, I was part of the team that finally closed that deal with Roger Edmondson and the team from DMG.
And then now didn't Dorna take over? And that's how we've got the Moto America brand now, which I'm still not used to. I'm old school. I like the MA Superbike brand.
Yeah, it's not Dorna. It's called the Crave Group. It's five guys that the letters in the word Crave with a K are initial of all the five owners, and this is going to be, I think, their 12th year, and they just bought the Superbike, the road racing stuff. That's what they own.
Okay, so let's bring everything full circle. We're going to start by going back to Brandrenaline. And you gave us a really good primer at the beginning. So let's touch on those details again about where the opportunity came from for Brandrenaline.
So my expectation, as I said, was I'm going to hang this shingle. I've got all this great experience in the US, so I'll get work in Canada with Canadian Motorsport. And it didn't happen. I mean, first of all, nobody knew who I was. Um, and uh, uh, and the motorsport industry had really changed from where it was like in the early 90s. Excuse me. So my first client was actually a carbon fiber shop in South Carolina that was a defense contractor. The guy that ran and owned the carbon fiber shop happened to own the Porsche factory 911 team called Core Autosport. And he hired me, not anything to do with their motorsport program. He hired me to write a marketing strategy for his carbon fiber business. So that was my first client with Brandrenaline. Then I get a call from my old pal, John Doonan, who's the head of motorsport at Mazda, who I had met in 2001 when I was at Skip Barber. And he's like, "What are you doing?" And one thing led to another. And I ended up spending 6.5 years with Mazda as agency of record for both Mazda North America, which ran global, and Mazda Canada.
And what did that entail? What were you doing for Mazda? Because that is a very big deal.
That's a really simple question with an unbelievably complicated answer. I did everything. I wrote probably 64, not probably, I know exactly. I wrote 64 strategy documents when I was there. I was involved in every element. I kind of rebuilt the Mazda Road to Indy and rebranded it. I built the Mazda Road to 24, which had a different name. I rejuvenated the shootouts that we did. They went from a local thing to global.
Did you have a hand in the rebranding, or I guess the relaunch of the Atlantic series when it went from Toyota Atlantic to Champ Car Atlantic? Because those were Mazda engines, the 2.3s in the back of them.
Yeah, they were there. That already existed when I got to Mazda.
Okay.
So I was involved with everything, and of course, a STEM program we did, and one of the biggest stories in the last 25 years in sports car racing was securing Yoast, which I was, everything like that starts somewhere. That started with me.
Are you talking about the Daytona Prototype International car, the DPI?
Yes, yes.
And when you say Yost, was that Reinhold Jost's team who used to run the factory Audi R8s?
Yes, the world's most successful sports car team that Audi had dropped. And at the Daytona 24-hour, Ralph Juttner, who had taken over running Team Yost, Reinhold was still involved, but Ralph Juttner and his wife ran the team, and he was down there hanging out. And I found him and snuck him into Mazda hospitality, and John Doonan and I met with him, and then a couple weeks later, we were on a plane to Germany, and the rest is history.
I imagine you were probably the gatekeeper or one of the influencers behind Mazda's decision to re-enter IMSA in that DPI class. And what was it like? Because I imagine IMSA was probably courting Mazda at this point, and you were the one looking at all the numbers to see if this made sense. Have I got that right?
Yeah, so when I got there, Mazda was running diesel-engined Mazda 6s with speed source in a class that IMSA called GX. Well, it wasn't IMSA, it was
Was
Grand
it
Am.
okay? It was the SC, yeah, Grand M series. Yeah, this was before the. That's right. This was before
Yeah,
both of them. Everything merges in motorsports
yeah.
eventually.
So they had and Grand Am had created the GX class so that Mazda had somewhere to race. So
And
there was two.
And those
Sorry, go
GX
ahead.
cars, they were like, I don't wanna say they were like Trans Am cars, but they were kinda like conventional stock cars where they were like tube frame chassis over roll cages, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they were bodied Mazda 6 bodied with a 2-liter diesel engine, but the class had 3 cars, 2 Mazdas and a Porsche Cayman.
Ooh.
And we had a horrible outing at Daytona with those cars. And I went to John and I said, "We need to be in the prototype class," which at that time was the Lolas, which are now P2 cars. And John reminded me that Mazda was a small company with 1.2% market share in the United States and was punching way above its weight with the Mazda Road to Indy and the sports car ladder we had. And I said, "John, let me write a strategy for this." And um, he reluctantly agreed, and I wrote the strategy, and we went and moved the diesel engine program to the prototype class.
So wait, were the prototypes running diesel engines?
Absolutely. When we started, they were, yes.
Interesting. I didn't think that, at the time. I guess at this point, it's still it merges to IMSA, right? Because after they drop the whole Daytona prototype class, that's when the merger happens and the DPI class kinda rises out of the ashes. Have I got it right, the timeline?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. So after you drop the diesel engines, though, what gasoline engine do you go to? And what's the discussion like internally versus going through, say, a possible four-cylinder turbo versus a naturally aspirated V6 and so forth?
So we were being driven by the market, and Mazda had received California approval to sell diesels. They had received initial approval to sell diesels, and then that got overturned with further testing from the EPA. And eventually they decided that they weren't going to sell diesels in North America at all, even and Canada was going to do the same. So while diesels were still on the chalkboard for sale in North America, we had to run diesel. As soon as that got lifted, we were running. We went back to the 2-liter turbocharged internal combustion engine.
Crazy to think that Mazda was pushing diesels because you can barely find a diesel nowadays with the way things are going.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Europe. Europe, everyone's got at least 1 or 2 diesels per car. So just winding down on Brandrenaline, if anyone watching or listening to this wants to learn more, what's the best way they can go about it? What's the Brandrenaline website?
Well, it's inactive, Victor. There is a website. It's got some of my crazy stories there as blog stories. The best way to get a hold of me on any of this is through LinkedIn.
Through LinkedIn? Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm going to put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the video. And before we hit rapid fire questions, let's also bring this full circle with um, MotoVitesse. Okay, you teed that up early on in the conversation. Let's dive back into that as well, too, about where the idea came from and what you're looking to achieve with it.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. Again, my if I was to simplify the mission of sports and of television and of Walmart and of General Motors, it's to aggregate and monetize mass audience. That's what we're trying to do. And I always felt motorsport is fantastic. It should be able to do it in a grander scale than it does. So I went through this process. The first thing I got to do is identify the problem. And I studied stick and ball sports to identify these elements that are in place. And we don't have time for me to go deep in it, so I'm going to try to keep this high level. And you kids can play along at home, and when you're watching pro sports and the Olympics and stuff like that as you move forward. So I identified 4 elements that have to be in place for a sport to aggregate and monetize mass audience. The first one is there has to be a big prize. Let me oversimplify this. The only time we care about shot put and pole vault is when there's a gold medal on the line. Um,
Very true. Yeah.
the the difference between the Iowa Corn 300 and the Indy 500, same team, same drivers, same kind of thing, different prize. You got to have a big prize where fans can go, my God, they're really playing for something. Green jacket in golf. So that's the first one. The second one is you need the world's best athletes. NFL, CFL, right? Look at the difference in audience from world's best to maybe not so much. So that's the second. The third one is the audience needs to be able to relate to the talent of the athletes. This one is really tough. Okay, so let me use the NFL. Do you remember the Odell Beckham Jr. catch when he was with the Giants?
I've probably seen it, not a big NFL guy, but,
Yeah, so
go
he
for it.
jumps 55 feet in the air, backwards, catches the ball with one hand, comes down in the and touchdown.
Okay, I've definitely
Unbelievable.
seen that clip, yeah.
Whether you've ever even had a football in your hand, you can look at that athletic feat and appreciate it. In motorsport, in car racing specifically, the hands and feet are hidden.
Mm,
The things that make Max fast are hidden. So how do you relate to his talent? How can you look at that and go, the thing he's doing is unbelievable. I appreciate it. I understand it, and I could never do it. And I said auto racing specifically because if you go to an AMA Supercross event and you see Jet Lawrence take his bike over the whoopty whoops and jump, do a triple where he's 40 feet in the air. If you've never rode a dirt bike, you can still look at that and go, I can't do that. That guy's amazing. That girl's amazing. So talent that people can relate to is the third pillar. And the last one is transparency. You can't hide the stuff that makes people successful. When Tiger Woods steps up for his third shot on a five on a par five, you can't hide what club he's using and how far he is from the hole. That's what motorsport does. It hides the things that are happening that make the event successful. There's some crossover between talent you can relate to and transparency. But if you watch sports and apply those four filters to what you're watching, you'll find out that the top events, pro or amateur, when you add those filters, the big prize, world's best athletes, talent people can relate to, and transparency, when they're all in place, you have a real sport. So, okay, step one, there's the problem. Step two, how do you fix it? So again, this has been over 20 years, and there was three aha moments for me. The first one was in 2011-ish. There's a press release that goes out that says Rogers and Bell have bought Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So this hit me, and I didn't know what it was, Victor, but it hit me. And I actually wrote about it on Brandrenaline on one of those blog things. The content distributors bought the content creators. I mean, this was crazy to me because if you think about it, in their previous model, they would negotiate with the NHL and the NBA for the rights. So they pay a rights fee, and then they have subscriptions and advertising as their revenue streams. Now they own the player contracts, they own the sponsorship, they own the suites, they own the parking, they own the t-shirts, they own the popcorn, they own the buildings, and they take their 75% equity of MLSE, and now they're participating in all of the revenue streams. This was crazy to me, but it still didn't get me where I needed to get. The next thing happened in around 2017. So step one was content distributors buying the content creators. Step two, Amazon Prime streams an NFL game on a Thursday night. And I'm like, what is this? They also streamed on Twitch. So this was another aha moment where I was like, what is going on here? And now, fast forward to 2022, Amazon does a deal with the NFL. They're paying 60 million US dollars for the rights to one Thursday night football game with two revenue streams, subscriptions and advertising. So imagine a world where the streamer, the global streamer, Amazon, Netflix, DAZN, Apple, Paramount, Disney, YouTube. Imagine if they had the model of MLSE and Rogers and Bell, where they owned the content creators and owned all of the revenue streams. So now I'm starting to put this together. There's a big flaw, not a flaw, there's a barrier in the Rogers MLSE model. They own the content creators, Victor, but they don't own the content. The content is under license. It's owned by the NHL. So again, that model of the content distributor owning the content had that hole in it. So in my mind, I'm going, okay, the model should be that the content distributor should own the content. And imagine any of those streamers owning a league or owning a racing series or whatever it is. Um, I still didn't have the final piece of the puzzle. And the final piece of the puzzle came 2.5 years ago, and for me anyway, and that was artificial intelligence. So those last two pieces of my four pillars, talent people can relate to and transparency, I can now address this with artificial intelligence, where I can take non-proprietary data from the most data intense sport on the planet, which is motorsport, and I can run it through an AI filter and translate it into language that people will understand. I'm way oversimplifying what this is, Victor, but let me give you my vision of the future.
Okay, go for it,
In,
please.
in, a, in a hypothetical, Apple owns a race series, and they own the series, they own the content, they own the content creators, they own everything.
Full vertical integration.
Full vertical integration. They're now offering, yeah, and you're watching Formula One. I don't want to put a formula on it. You're watching a race. You, Victor, you're watching a race, and you're using an Apple VR headset, the Vision Pro or whatever they're called, and you get to self-direct the entire broadcast. So you pick the cameras. You've got onboard camera. You've got cameras in the car behind your favorite one, in front of your favorite one. You've got the drone camera. You've got the corner cameras, and you just use your AI uh, conduit to say, I want the broadcast to focus on this driver for the next 5 laps. I want the commentary to reflect the data that's happening. Give me the splits. Give me all of this, and um, you self-direct the entire broadcast. Motorsports and motorsports and golf have this tremendous challenge. They take place over 600 acres.
Mm.
If you're watching on television, you're at the mercy of the producer. The commentary, you're at the mercy of the talking heads. If your favorite driver isn't wherever on TV, you don't get to see it. In golf, you have 125 players playing at once. And I'll tell you, Victor, golf is doing almost everything that I'm talking about. They're doing it now. They're building a second screen experience, which is a digital twin. The commentary, you mentioned Murray Walker before. You can take the commentary, and they're doing this. Golf isn't doing this part yet, but it's coming. You could take the commentary and say, I want this commentary done in the voice of Murray Walker, in his dialect and his style. So you take the actual broadcasters, you translate it, or you could say, I want it done in Portuguese, and I want the demographic of the person delivering the content to be a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old. So you're self-directing the entire experience. And again, golf and motorsport, it's very difficult to cover. So you self-direct the whole experience. Again, I'm kind of oversimplifying it. Probably doesn't make any sense to you.
No, it does
But
make
that's
sense to me. Yeah, I kind of remember a company that we're going back almost 20 years. Do you remember Kangaroo TV?
absolutely,
Yeah, I
yes.
kind of remember they were like a flash in the pan, and I remember that they were at Champ Car events, and then reading up on them personally, they were also looking at getting into golf before the whole model dissolved. And I think they were also in NASCAR as well too, but they called it NASCAR FanView. They did a bit of a rebrand. But no, I completely see where you're going with this. It is a pretty exciting time for how people can personalize the whole sporting experience for themselves now.
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to build. I've had a couple of real kicks in the ass along the way of making mistakes, but I really believe based on 30 years in the industry, I know where all the potholes are. And I believe, Victor, and I'm appreciative of this opportunity to memorialize this. I think this is going to be the way pro sports are, or sports in general, down the road. I've got quotes from Netflix, from Amazon that support this exact model. The 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 um, the model of leasing and renting time limited geofence rights. They're sick of it. And you think about MLSE. MLSE, when it was bought in 2011, had a $2 billion valuation. Last year, when Bell said they wanted out, $9.2 billion valuation for MLSE, and that product is geofence to Canada. Imagine if you open it up to the globe. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, we wish you all the best with that. It definitely seems absolutely tremendous, and we're going to be following everything you do here. And if anyone else listening or watching to this wants to follow, what's the best way they can do?
Well, again, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach out to me.
LinkedIn. Can we throw up
Yeah.
the MotoVitesse website as well?
Yeah, it exists, but again, it's a landing page at this point. It's motovitesse.com.
Perfect. All right, Jim, this has been a great chat. You ready for rapid fire questions?
I'm ready.
Okay. So the campaign or sponsorship deal that you are most proud of?
So the most fulfilling, which might not be exactly what you're asking, was the STEM program at Mazda. It was fantastic. We did about 35 to 40 high schools, Canada, US. Um, we took our the whole foundation of it was the fact that we were running that diesel engine. We were using um, the fuel we were using was made from inedible food waste, so it was bio. It was a great program.
Your favorite movie?
So I used mathematics to answer this. I love lots of movies. I love The Bourne. I love the Bond. I love Mission Impossible. I love Tin Cup. But the movie I've probably seen the most, and the one that if I see it, if I'm scrolling past it, I stop, and it's the Natural with Robert Redford.
If Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
So I'm going to be specific here, Victor.
Be specific. You're not the first one to
Late
be this specific.
late '60s era William Shatner when he's on the bridge of the USS Enterprise. That's what it would be.
Amen. Okay, and my follow-up to that, if Hollywood were to make this movie based on your life story, what would we call it?
Well, to summarize my journey, it would be something like thinking outside the box, but that's so overused. So I'm gonna come up with something different that says the same thing. It would be called No Track Limits.
And if anyone watches Formula One, you hear that quite a bit during the race, track limits. I ask all my guests what their favorite book is, but you have got a podium. So what are your three favorite books?
Yeah, so P3 is Fast Guys, Rich Guys, and Idiots by Sports Illustrated writer Sam Moses. Came out in the mid '80s, still relevant today. Great book. P2 is a book called Racer, and I have a prop. Racer by my buddy Jade Gers, um, and it's an authorized autobiography. Uh, Great read. And then my P1, same author, a book called Beast by Jade Gers about the 1994 Indy 500 and the crazy Mercedes pushrod engine that showed up that made them rewrite the rule book again after the race.
I've read Beast, and that is a must read for anyone that is a motorsports fan. And I got to say, for the John Andretti book, I like that they used a shot of him from his IndyCar days in the early 90s versus his NASCAR days.
Yeah, that's Jade was pushing that. Jade loves the Indy cars.
Your favorite song?
Again, mathematics. Back in the day, Victor, we used to have to download music onto our phone so we could listen on a plane. And I have 8 versions of People Get Ready, 8 different cover versions of People Get Ready. So I'm going to say that. If you were to change the question to if you were on a desert island, and you had one album, it would be Van Halen 1. But to answer your question, People Get Ready. The Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart version.
The best advice you have ever received?
Um, so I'm going to just go back to my experience with my father, work ethic. And then I'm going to point to my grade 6 math teacher who I was a bit of a whiz kid with math, and I didn't know what the relevance of it was. And my grade 6 math teacher simply said to me, I'm not teaching you how to add and subtract. I'm teaching you how to solve problems, and it's going to come in handy, and you're very good at it. And that time I didn't know what it meant, but it's been very, very meaningful to me.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
Um, well, I certainly wouldn't change anything. It's been a crazy ride. But if I was to give myself advice, it would be to take more credit for the work I've done. I've done a lot of work. By definition, being a consultant, you do work for other people to make them look good. But I've done a lot of work that had other people's name on it, and I would probably change that a little bit.
My signature closing question: if you weren't in media and marketing, what would you be doing and why?
I'm a big believer in the concept of prodigies. Imagine if Tiger Woods' father was, his passion was the piano, or if Austin Matthews never touched a hockey stick, or imagine if nobody put a guitar in Eddie Van Halen's hand. So I think you're a prodigy on something, Victor. I think I'm a prodigy. I have no idea what it is. It's not what I'm doing. I mean, I'm pretty good at what I do. But if to answer your question, I think that hockey coach would have been my jam if I wasn't doing what I'm doing.
Jim, we're going to end things right here. It's been a fantastic chat. Thank you so much for stopping by.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Victor.